So we are back by popular demand. And as you guys can see, I'm actually in a different setup. So like I said, I'm going to be trying to go with like different kind of setups, to, like really catch the ambiance of just, I don't know, whatever. Being up in the house, apartment, whatever, the room. Oh, they really isn't good for my mental health, man. Like, it's not good, it's not good for anybody. So, again, just kind of like reconnect with nature and just come out here and really do some stuff. And I don't know, just talk to y'all through a camera with the namesake of the channel, RT Talk. So, I think this is good. And again, I'll work with different setups in the future, but this is just kind of like me experimenting. And I don't know if y'all can see like the sweat, but it took me probably like, I don't know, like 10 minutes to get the lighting right. And I had to like move around and stuff like that because I'm actually like at my local park and everything. So, but yeah. So anyway, that's just kind of the intro. So this episode is actually going to be discussing track and field. And I know a lot of the people that do watch my videos or like follow me in general are track oriented people, aside from just like sports. So why I feel like this video is necessary, and maybe it's going to be a little bit ranty on my part, but a lot of y'all probably don't know, and this is really for my non-track audience. The USATF Outdoor Championships were actually last weekend. I was just scrolling through like social media and everything else, and a lot of people didn't even know they were going on, except for maybe like one or two, or even like another instance of just, I guess, viral moments, if you will. So I think that really just defines the sport as a whole. And in this video, again, it's going to be kind of ranty. I try not to make my videos ranty, but I really think it's just necessary to kind of like voice my frustrations, because I know a lot of people actually will align with those frustrations. But I also want to put it out there just in general, just kind of how the sport actually is, because I think a lot of times people come in, or outsiders don't really have an idea of what it is, or they might even just have a misconception of what it is. So that's pretty much what the video is going to be. But before any of that, we got our star of the episode, or star of the show. So I actually kind of cheating. I usually make my own teas and stuff like that, but today I just felt like it was just better just to go and get, if I can get this open, to go and get my own tea from this like tea shop or whatever, or tea coffee shop, whatever have you. So this is, according to the guy, like a ginger cinnamon something tea, and I got like a splash of oat milk too. So kind of an experimental drink. I mean, I guess today is kind of like an experimental day in general. Got different setup, different kind of drink, and it's iced too, because it's like 100 degrees right now. It's like 9 a.m. in the morning. So not gonna lie, I don't dislike it, but I think it probably needs like a splash of honey. But I think it's good. It is actually really good. Yeah, and like I'll actually, like, in the description of the video, include more about the tea as well. Just if y'all want to get it, or like try and make it at home or something like that. So we'll do that too. But anyway, so let's get into like the meat, gravy, potatoes of the video. So what really had me thinking about making a video like this actually kind of dates back to 2 years ago. So I was training with my professional group, and I've kind of alluded to the story in prior videos, but there was this individual in the group who was actually making very racist and just comments directed towards me that really did not make me feel welcomed or comfortable. And so again, people saw this and nothing really happened. And it actually resulted in me actually leaving the group, i.e., the coach basically kind of giving me an ultimatum. Like, well, you can't be here, but you don't have to necessarily leave. It's kind of weird. And that's why I train by myself on my college campus now. So it really had me thinking about just how I perceive the sport and how I've matured alongside the sport, and just kind of like the status of it kind of being right now. And I'll be completely honest with you guys. I don't think track and field in the United States at least, is really in a good spot. And that kind of even goes back to the whole Grand Slam track league. And for those who are probably like, again, newer viewers or don't really know much about track, we don't really have like an organized league per se. A lot of it is really, if you're post collegiate or professional, you find like a league to jump in, or a meet to jump in. So it can be on a college campus, it can be an actual organized professional league set with like sponsors or whatever. And most of the time, people like go overseas and stuff like that. And so again, we don't really have an organized league, but we have like a racing tour called the Continental Tour. And that tour has different tiers, if you will. So you'll have gold tier, bronze, and silver. And based on your performances and your times and just who you are, because again, it's sports, right? They'll determine whether or not you can basically enter. But the problem is, a lot of those meets are actually overseas. We do have some in the United States, but a lot of them are very much overseas. And so that's why the Grand Slam Track League is kind of like, I guess, the pivotal talk of this entire, I guess, episode, is because they, in my opinion, screwed over a lot of athletes and a lot of people in general. And so, it kind of started out as like a vanity kind of project by this Olympian. I'm not going to get into names because, again, I don't really say names in my videos and stuff like that. But he kind of perpetuated it as this is going to be like the Super Bowl of track and field and everything. And, they were able to pull it off for 4 out of the 5 meets, and then it ended up going bankrupt. And I mean, still, and you guys can even look it up, a lot of the athletes, most, if not all of them, haven't even gotten paid yet. And so why I think the whole Grand Slam Track League was just a bad idea and kind of reflects how track and field is just kind of dysfunctional in itself in the United States is, number one, athletes didn't get paid. That's kind of the main thing. Number two, the Grand Slam Track League actually ended up dissolving the American Track League, and the American Track League was actually a part of like the Continental Tour, so they would have meets as well. But the thing is, it was a lot more open, and so more people were actually aware of the American Track League, and the American Track League actually was being broadcast on ESPN. And so, it kind of dissolved it, but also remove opportunities for other fledgling track athletes, because the Grand Slam Track League, in my opinion, was very segregated. It really only consisted of the top 1%. And with that being said, it was really only sprint events. So they really didn't have jumps, throws, none of that. So you're already basically cutting off a good majority of the sport or the athletes in order to kind of like fuel this vanity project that you ended up not even being able to fully fund, because they weren't even able to finish their, like, I guess, a meet schedule, but also they weren't even able to pay their athletes and probably some of their partners too. So I kind of saw it floating around that they're trying to come out, second season or whatever with the second season, and it's not going to work. I'll just be honest with you guys. They're $30 million in debt and they haven't paid anybody. So the Grand Slam Track League is defunct. And so again, that I think really kind of goes into the functional problems with track and field, because track and field in itself is a sport that really does not seem to want to evolve. In fact, it seems like they want to close off even more. And again, that's kind of going in line with like the Grand Slam Track League not really being available to all athletes or even athletes of all events, and then ended up actually dissolving something that actually was, in my opinion, helping the sport grow. So why I think that's important to discuss is I do feel like track and field needs to evolve in the Americas, because it really is a dysfunctional mess. I mean, you have athletes not getting paid. Heck, you have the silver medalist of the 110 hurdles. He's actually unsponsored right now, and I mean, he just got that silver medal last year. So ask yourself, how on God's green earth can the literal Olympic silver medalist the following year after he got his Olympic medal be unsponsored. Even with some of the people that I came out with as far as my Olympic cycle, my first Olympic cycle out of college, and they made the Olympics, a lot of them came back and did not have a sponsorship. And so then you get into the nature of, well, what actually is a professional track career? What is a professional track athlete? I define it as someone that's ran in a professional meet, so it'd be sponsored by like Puma, Nike, whatever. But even getting into the logistics of that is kind of weird, actually, because in track and field, we have really and truthfully two sets of athletes. We have sponsored and unsponsored. Most athletes don't really get endorsements from any other entities. It's just really shoe deals. And so I feel like shoe companies know that, and they kind of withhold that or those deals even more so, as opposed to like other sports where NFL guys don't need Nike to be successful because most of their money is actually going to come from other sources, including their NFL contracts. Now, will it help? Yes. But in a lot of those situations, it's honestly like the companies are fighting for them, not necessarily the athletes fighting for the companies, if that makes sense. And that's really and truthfully the problem with track and field, is that when you have those two sets of athletes fighting, one fighting for like first contract and the other fighting to maintain their contract, the dynamic kind of shifts. And so then people don't even know who all is getting paid, what all is getting paid, and then it just kind of creates more uncertainty and a lack of knowledge. And so, people think when you say, oh, professional track and field, you must be rolling in cash, and a lot of people aren't. And that's why I feel like it is kind of an exploitation by these companies in some ways, because again, for even the sponsored athletes, not every deal is the same. And in addition to that, not everyone is actually getting paid by their deal, which is kind of crazy to say. But some people are only on gear deals. I was on a brief gear deal. So you're not necessarily getting money from that deal, but you still are benefiting in the sense of clothes, but yet the company is actually benefiting more because they're using your name, likeness, whatever, to basically pimp their brand out. And so then you get into, okay, the sponsored athletes with deals, with like actually like making money off their deals, a lot of those deals are not nearly as prestigious as like what people may think. And just to kind of throw a general number out there, I've seen deals that are like six figures. Most of them are $150,000 per 4-year contract. But if you divide that 150 per 4 years, and I'll let y'all do the math because I'm not good at math, it's really not that much money. And that's kind of the sad part about it, because a lot of times these athletes that are sponsored with these, getting paid, a lot of them have to take up second jobs. And so then you're just like a professional athlete taking up a second job out of necessity. Is that actually right? And so don't even get me started on being unsponsored, because that's just a struggle in itself, So all that being said, I think that's what really makes it even harder on the athletes, because of the fact that it's not necessarily a sport that seems like they actually want to evolve, i.e. maintain who they have or develop the talent they have. I've seen so many people, amazing people, talented people, literally just walk away from the sport because they're realizing, oh, well, there's actually more money in other things, or yeah, I'm making less than a teacher, or I don't even have time to train because I gotta make ends meet by working a 9-to-5 job. And so for my situation, I'm blessed because I work remotely and my job is not nearly as demanding. And I feel like in some situations, I actually make more than sponsored people, which is crazy to say. So yeah, I just think overall, like, that is something that a lot of people really need to touch on and really need to open up about, because that's not right. You shouldn't be a professional athlete having run all these amazing times, getting silver medal in the Olympics, or even being considered an Olympian, and coming back with really and truthfully nothing to show for it. It's not just, even if you like make money off of it, it's not money that you can just sit on per se. You have to constantly show out every single year and show why you actually deserve it. And even if you do, you might not even get that opportunity because you're quote unquote not marketable. And so I think that's another sad part in it too, because there are people who are very talented who are still struggling. And it's like they're just like, yeah, I don't really see the benefit of this anymore. I love it, but I don't see the benefit of it because that deal's just not coming. And they just get older and older. And obviously, the older you get, the less likely it is for a company to want to actually do business with you. So it's very, very, very difficult. Yeah, I just think overall it's very difficult for athletes. And again, that's not completely exonerating athletes of being the reason why the sport is kind of the way it is. I don't feel as though athletes actually, or any athletes really make the initiative to fight for more in the sense of the sport as a whole. I think that's because track and field is obviously a very selfish sport. You just kind of compete for yourself, or quote unquote, so to speak, or that's what a lot of people think. And that really brings me to my third problem with the sport is the egos, or are the egos, I should say. I feel like there's an egocentrism problem. I mean, you can apply that to really any sport, but I feel like definitely for track and field is very, very, very present. And kind of going back to my prior point, track and field seems to be a sport that really doesn't want to open up and evolve. It just seems like they want to, I say they, but well, it really is they because I don't care, like, but it seems like a lot of track athletes, coaches, agents, even meet directors are afraid of change. They don't really want to evolve. It's almost as if they want to kind of make the sport a pseudo cool kids club. And so, I mean, just even going in lines with that, I was watching a video, again, no names, but this guy, I guess he's a fledgling reporter or something, I don't know. Basically, he was at the USATF trying to cover the actual event, an event that did not get any media coverage on ESPN other than maybe like one or two things. And so, him and another Olympian and very prolific jumper, along with I guess like her posse and stuff like that, kind of just kicked him out. And so, well, snitched on him and then kicked him out, so to speak. You got security and stuff like that. So, we can get into the logistics of like who was right and who was wrong. Personally, I think both sides were in the wrong. But again, just with the way they kind of went about it with the reporter guy and stuff like that, I don't really think that was good, because again, it just kind of shows the problem of track and field wanting to be closed off. I mean, you look at other sports. You have football, they have influencers. Basketball, they have influencers. People that they've kind of branched out to over the years to kind of help promote the sport as a whole. Track and field really doesn't have that. Like, yeah, we have podcast people like every now and then, or people that might, make their living off of basically trashing the athletes, which I think is still kind of crazy. Again, no names, but I think most people know who I'm talking about. But we don't really have that subset group that is really like influencer base, if that makes sense. And I think that's kind of hurting the sport as a whole. But I also think the sport is resistant to that, just with how a lot of people are egocentrism wise. And so that actually brings me back to my story about when I was in the training group and I had this individual basically just being just hateful towards me for no reason, actually. The fact that these people are that confident with that, I think really hurts the sport. And the biggest joke about it is, again, going back to what I was saying, no matter how successful you are, you can have all these Olympic medals, all these titles and stuff like that. At the end of the day, a gold medal in the United States is worth less than a bronze medal in other countries. That is a problem. And I think with that being a problem, and a very obvious one, it's kind of crazy how some people in the sport actually do have the egos that they do. Because I would say maybe a less than 1% percentage is actually making millions of dollars. Now, you do make money from other situations as well, like appearance fees. Again, like some people might have like little endorsements on the side and stuff like that. But for the vast majority, it's not like that. Even for people that are Olympic champions, it's not like that. And so it's just crazy to me how some people do have the egos that they have in the sport. It really is, because it's like at the end of the day, I've been treated so much better by other professional athletes of other sports. And then when it comes to track and field, again, it's almost like the cool kids club, like you're not good enough to even be around us kind of thing. And I think that mindset is another thing that's really hurting the sport, you know? So lack of awareness, egocentrism, and just honestly money in general. So what does all this mean as far as how I perceive the sport? And I know I kind of went hard and everything, just going in on the overall dynamics and stuff. I love the sport of track and field. It's actually personally given me so many opportunities, not just, money wise, getting to know different people, getting to know more about myself, learning about different cultures, traveling, all of these amazing things. That's why I feel like I have a right to basically have a problem with how things are ran. There is such a dysfunctional, crappy mindset within the community that is really preventing it to grow. So again, we don't really have a formal structural league. We just have world tours, and that's everywhere. And don't get me started, because like some people, even the sponsored athletes, they can't afford to go travel in Europe and stuff like that, which is why again the pitch of the Grand Slam track league was so appealing, and why I feel like it was a fundamental failure for a lot of athletes, or just like the sport as a whole, because you're basically pitching as like, this is going to be the money maker, this is going to be like the startup league, we're going to be as big as the NFL, like whatever kind of pitches were coming out. And then fast forward a couple of years later, after their inaugural league, now they're $30 million in debt and had to cancel the last the last track meet they had scheduled. And then again you get into like the egocentrism with track, that just seems like they don't want any outsiders. They want to keep everything in, and then again complain when people aren't making money or they get cut or whatever. It's not right. And so I just think moving forward, the sport has to evolve, because realistically, the sport has honestly kind of been stagnant. Yes, there have been a surgence of young people that have actually been running times that Olympians are running, which I think is crazy. You got high schoolers running 9.7 now. That is actually insane, and congrats to those kids. But the sad part about it is, no matter how fast they run or how successful, if the sport doesn't evolve, they're not going to get a good return value on it. And so I just think as a whole, the sport has to start to be willing to actually want to branch out and have people want to talk about it. And a lot of times, even when there is something to talk about, it's not talked about in a good sense or talked about at all. So again, we had the U.S. champion on the women's side. She ran 10.65, which is a top 5 time in world history. ESPN didn't say anything about it. We had some drama in the men's 200, and people talked about it in a negative sense, and maybe I'm the outlier. I think that kind of drama is good, because it makes you want to watch, right? But at the end of the day, the sport has to evolve. It's not evolving in the way that I think a lot of people really want it to, per se. But again, what initiatives are being taken to actually evolve it in the way where we're starting to be talked about, in news cycles like ESPN and whatever. 2, we're actually inviting more people to the sport and welcoming them to the sport. We've had football players, the NFL football players, that want to come and jump in races and see how fast they are and stuff like that. And a lot of track people are kind of like, this is our sport kind of thing. So that's kind of, another example of what I'm talking about. And number 3, it really just comes down to the awareness, especially like finances, because a lot of people are not making millions. Like track and field, even though there's millions of dollars in it, a lot of that is not being funneled to the athletes. I think that's personally exploitation, especially in terms of gear deals where a lot of people just get gear. They don't necessarily get money. Or if you might be a silver medalist and you're trying to get more money, and the company's like, yeah, we don't think you're marketable enough, so you either take this contract or we're leaving. That's kind of a crappy ultimatum to have or present someone. So, all that being said, that was just kind of my spiel. I just think, again, the sport needs to grow. It's my T. sort of speed weight. Man. So again, I do apologize. Well, I say again, but I do apologize because I know this video is going to be a little bit longer just because I wanted to touch on a lot of stuff. But I mean, yeah, it's pretty much it. So love y'all. Hope y'all enjoy kind of like the new ambiance and stuff like that. We'll probably do the setup again, but it's hot. Like in Louisiana, it's like 99 degrees, 100 degrees, stuff like that. So that's why I had to actually get my iced tea today. I couldn't get the hot stuff, which I actually prefer. So anyway, guys, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. And I mean, honestly, like, interact with me. Like, I want this video to be critiqued. Like, I want people to actually give their opinions on what we can do to actually evolve the sport, or just other problems that need to be identified to kind of push the sport forward. So anyway, that's just kind of my take. So love y'all. Peace out. See y'all in the next video.